Chapter 3. An old rundown house and a haunted house. Spirits can occupy any place at any time. However, they seem to claim ownership of some building where they have been invited. Such buildings soon have the reputation of being called haunted houses. The following experience took place in Puna, India, in one such haunted house that happened to be a bungalow. Prakash, from Malaysia, was taking a course at the Spicer College in Pune in the year 2000. He was unable to find proper housing for his family within the college campus. So, he had to rent an old run-down building which was about 3 kilometers away from the college. The house was actually a run-down mansion situated somewhat on a low land, below the level of the main road. It had been converted into living quarters for students studying at the Spicer College. Child could see the spirit. One morning at about 9 o'clock, Prakash's wife noticed the 2-year-old son, who was having his breakfast then, talking and playing, as if he was with another child near him. She could not see the figure, but the child could. He was stretching his spoon out as if feeding someone near him. He was also laughing and speaking as if to someone. His wife snatched the spoon from him. At that moment, she felt a little suspicious about spirits in the house. The Prakash family had recently moved into the mansion house, and they did not know the background story related to that building. 2.5 hours later, on the same day, the wife was taking her shower in the bathroom. After the bath, she tried to open the door in order to come out, but it had been locked from the outside. At the time of this incident, Prakash was away attending a class in college, and his 2 infant sons, aged 2 years and 1 year, were with his wife. It would be impossible for his infant children to have locked the door from the outside, because the door was a heavy metal door, and the lock was far above their reach. His wife, who was trapped inside the bathroom, shouted and screamed for help. 2 hours later, at about 1:40 p.m., his wife managed to come out of the bathroom with the help from the landlord, who had happened to hear her crying for help. This experience was a phenomena which she could not explain. When Prakash returned from his classes that afternoon for his lunch, he realized that his family was in trouble. He perceived that spirits were living in that house. His wife got scared too, and on the same day in the afternoon, she took the children to her brother, Jonathan, who was living with his family within the college campus. They remained there until dusk that evening. When night was falling, it was time to return to their rented house. So they tried to be brave and slowly began to walk back to their rented mansion house. The mother saw a ghost. As they approached the gate of the mansion house, Prakash noticed that his wife was not her usual self. He saw his elder son pulling the mother's hand to lead her towards the gate of the house with a supernatural force. She was too scared to open the gate or go in. They managed to open the gate and get into the compound. Then, all of a sudden, the wife fainted and fell at the doorsteps of the house. Prakash assisted her, and when she recovered, she told the husband what she really saw. 2 ghostly-looking figures were standing at the doorsteps of the house, one looking like a mother, and the other a child. This incident made them quickly return to the college campus to Jonathan's house. Prakash explained the event to Jonathan, his brother-in-law. At that time, Dr. Bruce Bower, a lecturer at the college, heard the news of the event. He quickly came with a few others to assist the Prakash's family. When Dr. Bauer arrived at the scene, Prakash's wife was behaving abnormally. The elder son was also crying ceaselessly and loudly for no apparent reason. The spirit seemed to jump between Prakash's wife and the elder son. When the mother was well, the son was disturbed. When the son stopped crying, the mother was affected. Then, Dr. Bauer told those who came to help to separate the child from the mother. This time they prayed simultaneously in 2 groups. One group laid hands on the wife and prayed for her, while the other group likewise prayed for the son. This arrangement appeared successful in preventing the spirit from jumping from the mother to the child and vice versa. For about a week, the Prakash family stayed away from that haunted house. Jonathan accommodated them for a week. During that time, an audible voice told the wife to return to the rented house. Upon hearing the voice, the wife fainted again. Good spirits prevailed against bad ones. Paul Raj, Kumar, and his family, Jonathan and his family, and several other students fasted and prayed for the wife of Prakash. During one prayer session, the wife said later on, she saw a long train of bad spirits that looked like armed soldiers marching from the haunted house to the gate of the college. They seemed to stand in a long line of about a kilometer in length. The group of collect students earnestly prayed for the wife and the son. They noticed that when they stopped praying, the spirits seemed to strangle the wife's neck and tried to kill her. But while they were praying earnestly, the spirits left her. It appeared to Prakash that there was a war between the bad spirits and good ones. At the final phase of their prayer session, the wife later reported to Prakash that she saw two holy angels dressed in white appearing in the sky. One of them stood near the wife and covered her face with his wings. The other angel stood at the gate of the college and gave a hand signal to the bad spirits to leave by waving his right hand. At that moment the bad spirits fled from the scene, and at that moment the wife was delivered. She stood up on her feet and started to serve others who were around her in the house. A few weeks later, Prakash learned that an infant child and its mother had been murdered in that run-down haunted house. Since then, the house had been haunted with bad spirits. This bad experience they had in that house made them move out of the place and look for another. In the new house, the family did not encounter any troubles like this again. This experience of Prakash also proves that spirits do inhabit certain places which they take possession of. If one ventures into such places, one can encounter their attacks. Chapter 3 continued another haunted house. Susila's contact in Ipoh. Here's another story about how bad spirits occupied a terrace house where there was an unnatural death. This experience took place at the Burkham Flats in Ipoh in the year 2003. Susila was befriending her neighbors. One day, during one of her visits with a neighbor, Susila met an Indian family which had moved into the flat about 3 months before. This family had moved from Alor, Setar, and Kedah. This was the story that was told to Susila by the woman whom she had befriended. The husband of that family was a contract worker specializing in building houses. He and his wife had earlier rented a terrace house in Alor Setar. They did not know that someone had committed suicide in that place before they moved in. They were newly married and had no children. A dead man appeared in the living room. One night, at about 11, when the wife was alone, and when the husband had not yet returned from work, the wife saw a gruesome figure of a man standing in the living room. She was shocked and terrified. At that very moment she was possessed by the spirit, but the symptoms of possession were not manifested until a few weeks later. When the husband returned from work that night, the shocked wife told him about the incident. When they did some investigation, they soon learned from the neighbors that a man had committed suicide in the living room of the house before they had moved in. This information obtained from the neighbors frightened them, and they realized that the house was haunted, and they quickly decided to move out. It was about that time the couple had come to Ipoh where they met Susila. The couple were now living with their in-laws in the Burkham Flats in Ipoh. In the Burkham Flats where the couple stayed, there were 2 infant girls of ages 2 years and 4 years that belonged to the wife's sister. The older one was always crying since the couple moved into their flat. The child's crying was quite unusual. It was at this juncture Susila met the family. Susila invited John, her pastor, to pray for the infant child at the flat. One day he visited the family and prayed for the child. The child appeared to be normal after prayer. Then he invited the family to attend a church service the next day in Ipoh. The next morning, the entire family came to church. During the class period, nothing extraordinary happened. Later, when they were about to enter the worship service at 11 am, some supernatural manifestations took place. They were singing when the woman who had come from Alo-Setar suddenly began to shout, scream, and shake her body. She was biting her teeth very tightly, her eyes were rolling within their sockets, and she was beating the cement floor with her bare hands. There was much noise and commotion in the youth hall where they had gathered. The other group, who were worshipping in the main hall, a little distance away, heard the commotion, and some of them ran to the room to see what was happening. Terence Sim stopped his sermon and came to see the commotion. Terence and John prayed for the lady. She was immediately delivered from possession. After 30 minutes, the worship service continued on without any disturbance. The woman who had a spirit attack together with her family went home quietly after that incident.